What's going on, everybody? Today I have a very special guest on the show. I know a lot of you all have been asking me over and over again, well, how come you don't have more conservatives outside of HA? Well, you all know how I feel about certain conservatives, quote unquote, and how I feel about certain progressive neoliberals, in progressive sheep's clothing, quote unquote. So there's very few people that I trust to come on and have a very genuine discussion. And it's not like those that I wouldn't have come on would even answer my messages anyway, because they know we're not here to just stroke each other's egos and scream about Hillary or, say that everything that Donald Trump is doing is part of a secret plan. We have like actual discussions. And so today, with me to have an actual discussion is Lee Stranahan of Fault Lines. How you doing, Lee?
Hey, Niko. Great to see you, man. I really appreciate having me on the show, by the way.
Oh, no, I greatly appreciate you coming on. For those of you who do not know, Lee Stranahan has a show in D.C. called Fault Lines. He actually co-hosts with Garland Nixon, a friend that most of you all on this channel should know about. So Lee probably thinks of himself as Garland's better half.
No, Garland's my partner. We talk about this all the time. For two guys who don't agree on everything ideologically, I feel very strongly. I got to say this: Garland is I could not ask for a better partner on the show. When we have discussions off air about the direction we want to take the show in, want to make it more entertaining, that kind of thing, we're always on the same page. And so Garland's a great guy to work with, and so I'm blessed.
Well, both y'all personalities fit each other. I love listening to the show. I've been on frequently. I love listening to it too, man. I love listening to it. If you have not checked out Fault Lines, make sure you do it. It's every single weekday at 7 when y'all start?
Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. But we also go out live on Periscope in 20-minute segments. So if Niko's on, for instance, you can just watch the Niko segment. We do the news at 7 a.m. for 20 minutes where we go over the headlines, we discuss them, and then we repeat the news top of the hour, shorter versions. And then we have an average, I would say, 5 guests a show, and then we talk about issues. And it's on Radio Sputnik. But
so I'm RT fans, make sure you go check them out, because you know that there would never be, like, if you go to MSNBC or any of these mainstream, they would never let an actual progressive and then an actual conservative have a show together trashing the establishment. That's not even a thing.
No. Which is, I'll tell you what's nuts about that. So if people think that the news is commercial, right? Because you think of it like, well, it's a profit center. Nah. And the reason I say that is because if you look at the election, the 2016 election, who clearly had the most crowds and enthusiasm? Which two candidates?
Trump and Bernie.
Trump and Bernie. Not even close. It wasn't even close. I covered as a reporter. I covered a Bernie rally. I covered a couple of Trump rallies. Not even close to anything that you saw from Hillary. So
those 15 people saying in the back.
That's right. So you'd think if they were commercial, right, they would think like, hey, let's do like a point counterpoint show with the Trump supporter and a Bernie supporter. But they can't do that. So instead what you get on CNN is a Hillary supporter versus a Jeb Bush supporter, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Or even a Hillary supporter plus versus a Bernie supporter, maybe.
Right.
They never let them talk or finish their sentences.
Right.
And then they say, isn't he a socialist? It's like, wait a minute. How do we even get to this point of the conversation? Right.
Yeah. Well, that's what it is. And so you, like I say, because we're on Sputnik, the advantage is they never tell us what to say. There's no meetings because we're stupid enough to do a show from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. So Garland and I are up at 4:35 in the morning. So nobody comes in. We're never like, you have to say this, you can't say that. It's, as you know, it's a funny show because it's a morning show, right? So the thing I don't like at a morning show is, good morning. Our next guest will be Niko House. He will be joining us to talk about blackness. Right? I mean, so So we try to do like a little bit of a morning zoo show, and that we keep it fun and we make stupid jokes, but we also get deep into the issues.
Yeah.
It's awesome. It's awesome. And
yeah. I think if and hopefully as you all continue to grow, YouTube will if you're looking for a show with two guys who agree on the overall goal, have different, ways of how to get
Right.
there and achieve them, but like a genuine discussion with guests from all sides of the political spectrum, go check out Fault Lines. They are on YouTube. Lee, you actually used to have a YouTube channel that was pretty large before, right?
Yes, I did. I had 1,000. My YouTube. So first off, I was on YouTube very early, and so I was doing videos in 2007, and it was early enough that was before Google bought YouTube. I actually was after they bought YouTube, they had a big party, and I met Hammer. Let's go over this. Hammer hugged me.
MC Hammer?
MC Hammer, yeah.
That is such a random celebration for him to be at, but whatever.
Well, no, this was early on YouTube, and it was in Northern California, and he's from Oakland, right?
Early investor.
And well, no, he was an early personality. This is when Twitter was new too. And I met Joe Satriani, and I met a bunch of YouTube celebrities, like the Chocolate Rain guy. And I was
that guy.
And I was there with Obama Girl. And the reason I was there with Obama Girl, who I know, was I was doing videos with the people who did Obama Girl. I was on the left at the time, and I was writing for Huffington Post. So I'm an old-time YouTube user, and they deleted my account last year. Lost 1,000 videos, 1,000, everything.
That's insane.
Everything I'd done, and a lot of it was stuff I hadn't had backed up, because this is before you had Dropbox, and you could just back up everything for
free. And a terabyte back then cost like $1,000.
That's right. No, there were no terabytes. And so I lost all these videos that I shot when I went to Beirut in 2013, that I shot on my iPhone, that the only place I had them, I immediately uploaded them from Beirut, all gone, and everything gone. And it was bad.
Did they tell you why they deleted it?
No, they never do. They never tell you that.
Really? Tim had his stopped, and it was because he had a word in the video.
Well, here's
like Las Vegas shooter.
They did tell me what it was, but it was 3 videos I'd posted that were Al Qaeda recruiting. What's that? What's happened? Okay, the TV just suddenly went on. But
that's not weird.
I had 3 videos that were short clips from an Al Qaeda recruiting video that I had used in a story about how Al Qaeda was recruiting in Minneapolis. Mm-hmm. And so the whole video is about an hour and a half long. And obviously it's a call to jihad, right? Yeah. So you don't want to post the whole thing. So I posted like 30 seconds here, 30 seconds there in news stories that I'd published. So, So do you think they would delete CNN's account for doing that? Of course.
No, I know for a fact, because they were showing the videos of them doing the ISIS doing special forces training.
That's right.
And they didn't.
Yeah. So that's what it was. 3 videos that had that, and they were taken down. But and then there's I think as Tim Black, great Tim Black, who's on the show a lot, knows. There's no appeals. There's no one you can call.
It's a BS appeals process. Yeah. It's like they have one, but it's not really one.
No. And it bothers me because, it bothers me anyway. It bothers me when it happened to Tim. It bothers me when it happens to anybody. But I mean, I lost videos of it's stupid, but I lost videos of my kids. I was using my YouTube channel just for whatever initially. Then it switched over to politics and talking. And then, before that happened, they killed my monetization, as a lot of people have suffered too. So it's really bad. It's really bad. Well, here's the other thing.
You went to Syria, right?
I went to Beirut.
Okay. Gotcha.
To interview Syrian refugees. My wife.
That's what it was. Yeah.
My wife wouldn't let me go to Syria because she loves me. And so, but Beirut is where the refugees were going in 2013. So that's who I wanted to interview. And I was in Beirut, which is only about a half hour from Damascus. It's not far, maybe 40 minutes from Damascus. So I met lots of Syrian refugees, and that was fantastic. And that's all gone.
How was that? What was the interactions like? What were the stories you were getting?
Well, what happened was this was
It had to be pretty revealing, considering.
It was very revealing. Here's what bugs me. So this is when Obama was going to shoot missiles into Syria because of the red line. Remember that?
Yeah. The red line we're still waiting for proof that got crossed.
That's right. And I was reporting on it at Breitbart at the time. I was working at Breitbart. And I found as a reporter, it's very hard to write stories remotely, because if I can sit here and try to read things about the Alton Sterling shooting in Baton Rouge, let's say, right? Type. But when I go to Baton Rouge and I talk to protesters and I talk to people, I get stuff I'd never get in a million years, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Every time.
So I was like, I got to go to Beirut.
Yeah.
And so I raised the money myself because Breitbart's cheap. And they would not, if I'd come to them and said, hey, can I go to Beirut? They would have said no. So I raised the money myself. And then they found out that I was going to go to Beirut. And then they were like, Steve Bannon, who was my boss at the time, and now everybody knows who Steve was, but Steve was like, you can't go to Beirut. And I'm like, well, dude, I've already raised the money and I bought the ticket. I'm going. I'll do all the work you want me to do. I'm not going to not write for you, but I'll do it in Beirut. He's like, no, you can't go. So I said, okay, bye. So I quit Breitbart to go to Beirut. And it was amazing. It was amazing because I found out everybody.
So you quit to go?
Yeah.
So what you're saying is you quit because they try to tell you where to go and where not to go, and you're like, I'd rather go.
Is it okay to curse? I don't know how.
Oh, hell yeah, it's okay to curse.
Okay. So one broad principle that I have is that when you're a journalist, whoever you work for, you can't let them fuck with your career, because so what Breitbart wanted me to do was, and you can't be a prima donna about it. So realistically, as a journalist, you got to balance yourself between, like, if I say I want to cover this story and it's not a really big story, and they're like, well, we don't want you to cover it, I wouldn't suggest quitting over that. But I could tell that was going to be the biggest story in the world.
Yeah, and it's a difference between we don't want you to cover it because we don't think it's going to be a good story, and we are specifically asking you not to cover it because we don't want. They want to keep the waters muddied, or they're pulling for a particular person.
I don't know. I don't think they knew it. My news judgment is better than theirs.
Yeah, I can see that. It's
and no, but it's better than everybody's. So.
I can see that. You've been pretty on point thus far. I remember some of the early conversations we had about what was going to come out about about Comey and Andrew McCabe, and we were on the same page. So
Andrew Breitbart was my friend. His news judgment was as good or better than mine. Andrew was we used to talk about it. Andrew used to talk about it. We used to say, because I'd already done journalism before I met Andrew. Yeah. And we used to say, it's like, do you surf?
No, I do not surf.
I don't surf either, right? And if you and I went to the beach and we're like, let's try surfing, you and I would be sitting there on our boards, and some people who surf all the time, they'd be looking way out at the ocean, and they'd go, a good wave's coming. And you and I'd be going, it all looks like the same horizon to me. But then it would come, and you'd go, oh, I see. These guys know something I don't know about.
Exactly. No, that's very true. That's almost exactly how it happens. After a while, it just becomes like you're on your board before anybody else even recognizes that there's a wave coming.
That's right. And Andrew and I used to say, we can see, like a quick example, this Amesbury poisoning that just happened. One of the victims died. This is related to the Salisbury poisoning. Mm-hmm. That just extended the life of this story by 6 months to a year. And the reason is now it's a murder investigation. It's very predictable. Yeah. Which means there's going to be family who's going to want answers. It's not just that she's sick, and they're not going to be able to bury it anymore. So I saw what was happening in Syria. I'm like, this is very bad, and it's not going to stop anytime soon. And sure enough, here we are 5 years later, and it's still around. So I think Bannon, if I'm being generous, he didn't see it. Now, if I'm being not generous, the right in America is funded by, and this is not me saying it even. I talked to a friend of mine who's a very well-known, respected, longtime conservative publisher. And we were talking about some issue, and he told me a year ago, he said, you got to understand, the right is funded by about 6 Jewish donors on the East Coast and the West Coast. And he said, they don't want to hear certain things. And when you, and it's not an anti-Semitic thing. It's
the Koch brothers are Jewish. I mean, Soros is Jewish on the left. Like, it's not really like
Adelson. Yeah. Adelson's the big donor.
Yeah. And, I mean, they kind of had a lot of the oldest money in the country. So it's not really in the world, really. It's not really all that surprising. Nobody should.
And it's just, it's just a fact, right? It's just a fact. And of course, not everyone who's Jewish is pro Netanyahu. You know what I mean?
So, actually, most aren't
in America,
from my experiences. Yeah, in America.
Yeah, right. No, right. So that's what. So it's always hesitant when you say that, but it's almost like if I said, there's a lot of black people in the NBA. You'd go,
yeah, exactly. Actually, that's a really good comparison, right? Yeah. No, seriously. It's like, it's just a fact. 70% black.
That's not racist. And so, and there's less so in hockey.
Yeah.
So, right. And so, the racist part is when he goes, black people are afraid of ice, and then you're like, well, why? Because they don't play hockey. You're like, well, that's not a really good argument.
Yeah.
But
that's a really good, because I think people need to understand the dynamics of, like, even with descriptive words or labels. In that particular case, nobody's using Jewish even in a religious sense.
No.
Hell, not even ethnic thing. It's like, if we're talking about a community, when you're talking about black money, Jewish money, Korean money, like, there are communities that actually respend their money in their own communities, and except for in black communities, because ours were burned to the ground, but in other communities, that's what it is. And like, I live in North Miami,
right?
The Jewish, like, the Cubans are just renting this place from the Jewish people there.
Right.
Kosher shops on every corner. So it's not surprising that people who have money also have interests, and the people who happen to have the most money have built empires off of spending it within their communities.
Yeah, and that's why, that's why. Just to riff on that for a second, it's very interesting. I don't think a film like Do the Right Thing, Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, could get made today almost, and that's too bad to me.
Yeah.
Because when you watch it, it's borderline stereotypical in that he's showing the way it was in Brooklyn at that time, which was Koreans owned the store on the corner, and the people in the community were upset, and then the Koreans, and it's borderline stereotypical. On the other hand, he was telling something that's true there about the white Italians are here, because he was talking about the reality of the situation. He wrote that after there'd been racial incidents in New York. And I think he'd have a tough time making that film today, even though I think he was fair. I think he was fair with the way he did it. And it's too bad to me that things are too politically correct now. I think you got to have.
We can't sometimes have that real conversation.
That's right.
The immigration conversation, I feel like, is something that needs to be had in a more raw form.
Yes,
but it's when people's lives are at stake. I totally understand why people get a little bit sensitive about it. The problem is that we've been discussing immigration.
Yes.
But only some people were listening, and only some people were really seeing. I said for a while, I said DACA was a smokescreen. Like, yeah, you exonerate these 200 kids, but look at what we're left at now. Whenever all this stuff was kind of like left in limbo by Obama. Right. What wasn't left in limbo, he kind of sent a lot of people out of the country also. Then why is it such a big deal for people now? Is it just because Trump is attached to it and they have an emotional connection towards Trump? Because before they didn't care.
Yeah, well, here's the reality. There's a lot of issues. Immigration is one. Abortion's another, right? Where there are lots of people in Washington, right across the Potomac from where I am. I mean, I work in Washington. But there's a lot of people in Washington who have 9-to-5s based on abortion or based on immigration. They work as community organizers or whatever. I'm not knocking it, but I'm just saying there's literally I've added it up, like thousands of people who are in that business, which means if you solve the problem, they got to go find another job.
Yeah, that's what I tell people all the time. When you have people's jobs relying on a topic, it's never going to get solved.
And it's on both sides. So abortion, there's people who raise a lot of money on I'm pro-choice, and people raise a lot of money on I'm pro-life. And to my mind, that's another one of those issues where if you really care about abortion, let's say you authentically care about it, what I always say to people is, if you saw someone being held hostage, gun to their head, right? And you could talk to the gunman and say, hey, let's chill out here a little bit and try to bring things down. Or you could go try to pass a law. What would you do?
Talk to the gunman.
Right.
Talk to the person one-on-one.
Because if you pass the law, the hostage will be dead by the time you get there. So if you care about abortion, you got to care about people who are pregnant now. Why are they pregnant? Why are they considering an abortion?
Which is usually economics, which ironically enough is putting us back in this problem, because there are people who would love to have an abortion, but literally they can't even afford to have the abortion, or
they'd love to have the kid. And the other thing,
exactly.
And the other thing about abortion, which is interesting, is according to Planned Parenthood, because I'm pro-life, but according to Planned Parenthood's own statistics, think about this: 20% of abortions are because the guy in the relationship says, "I think you should get an abortion." Now, my take is that is sexist. And what I mean by that is, I think if your argument is, which I actually agree with in a lot of ways, that it's the woman's decision, which it is, don't influence her by basically saying, well, I think you got to have the abortion because you break it, you bought it in that sense.
Yeah. That's kind of I feel like, now, obviously, there's danger to women's health. That's a whole different discussion. Right. But I'm 100% in that camp. If somebody can say, "Hey, I'm pregnant," I'm like, "Okay, well, let me know. Let me know what you want to do."
Right.
Like, and if they said, because I'm a pro-choice person. However, I am on I would rather you just have the child and we can figure it out, because and I get it. Like, there's a lot of back and forth on but it's really case by case. I don't even know why we try to blanket
that's
discussion.
Well, that's my take. So my whole point is, if you had a discussion about it, let's say you were able to cut abortion rates by 10%, by just saying, hey, let's have a conversation about whether it's really right that a guy should influence or pressure a woman. Because let's face it, the guys pressure women into having an abortion. So
it does happen.
Even just on a gender equality thing, that's wrong. And like, whatever you think, like, that's wrong. So let's say you could cut abortion by 5%, let's say 5% by doing that. Isn't that better than just arguing about it and trying to argue about Roe v. Wade if you care about abortion?
Yeah.
And I don't even see
if you actually care about the lie that you're supposedly trying to say.
That's exactly right. That's so my take is that a lot of the issues that people view as really divisive, it's bullshit. Because the divisiveness is to keep people employed, and because both Republicans and Democrats, it's what I call checklist Republicans, checklist Democrats. I'm running
90% of them, yes.
I'm running as a Republican, so I can go, I'm checking off the lower taxes box. I'll do the speech. If you elect me, I am pro-life, I'm anti-tax, and I'm for a strong military. And then you would come up as the checkbox Democrat and go, I'm pro-choice, right? I'm in favor of services and better education, and I'm in favor of a strong military. You see?
Yeah, that's the one point that stays the same. I'm going to get you out of the war that the Republicans put you
right.
in. I'm going to put you in my war now.
That's right.
And then a Republican comes, I'm going to make our military stronger, so we're good to fight all wars.
Like, that's right. And so, but I mean, that really is, look at it. That's what happens. And so many people fall into that where they're like, oh, I think I prefer the checklist on the left to the checklist on the right.
The checklist is literally never. They both increase taxes. They just kind of allocate how they increase them and upon who they increase them with. But no, pretty much I've seen no matter what, it's usually the middle class who gets hit. It doesn't matter who's in office.
Well, and on issues like abortion, and this is part of what bothered me when I was on the left too. I don't know if you know any black people in the South, but
I know a few. I know a few.
Okay, so you know this, right? I know this because I've talked to a lot of black farmers and stuff like that. If you're a black person or a white person in rural Mississippi, you are more likely to be pro-life than if you're white or black in New York City, right?
That's true. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, there's a Congressional Black Caucus, last I checked, like 17 members, right? How many of them are pro-life? Zero. You can't.
Yeah, because the older generation, country, like.
Well, but none of them are pro-life. This is what I'm saying.
Oh, you mean, okay, I got you. Okay.
They're all pro-choice. And the reason they're pro-choice, you can't tell me that one person would not be pro-life. In fact,
and it's just statistically an improbability.
They're not allowed to be in the same way. And so I'm in favor of and I'm picking on that example, but
because of it's like there's no way that we all feel the exact same way on this issue. We all happen to be in this particular caucus and all happen to be the same race. Like it doesn't, and all the same, party. It doesn't make any sense. It's not factual.
And in other countries, like George Galloway, who's a great former Labour Party, ran the Labour Party in Scotland when he was like 16 or something. Very, very left. He's a friend. He's on the show all the time. Galloway's in the UK, and he's pro-life, but he's on the left. But he's also anti-capital punishment, which, by the way, I am too. I'm anti-capital punishment. He takes a consistent position. You're not allowed to do that. And you know what I mean, allowed. In the left or the right here. You're supposed to be, I'm pro-saving babies.
You can get exiled for that.
Right. And so that's the world we live in right now, and it's bullshit. So
yeah, I'm one of those people which I don't really get ridiculed for, because once anybody explains their position and we get out of these little sound bites, most people are like, oh, that does kind of make sense. I get that. I see that. Like when we talk about taxation, there are people who, even libertarians, who could be the most hard-headed assholes in all of the world. Right. My generation libertarians, not yours. Yours is like the Ron Paul. I got the Rands. Okay?
Oh no, trust me. Trust me.
We can have conversations about, they're like, taxation is theft. Well, you are aware that every time we didn't have regulations, like, it's never turned out well. Not one time. Literally zero. They're like, well, we should have some regulations, maybe here and then here, and maybe a few taxes there. And, well, I guess that isn't a bad idea, huh? I'm like, yeah. It's crazy what happens when you actually can sit down and hash things out instead of arguing and having, a pissing contest over Facebook and Twitter.
And that's the world. So I have this way of explaining it, which is you got the left and you got the right. Okay. And this is one way to see the world. But let me ask you a question, Niko. Are you black or are you a man?
I am both.
Right. So what I'm saying is, is it invalid to ask your gender? Of course not. That's right. You can define that. And so is race, but they're not contradictory.
Yeah,
you can be any combination of whatever gender and whatever race. I
feel like the only healthy, I feel like the only way our environment will finally be healthy again is if we start remembering that. Is that we do have, I would say, much more in common than they pick on immigration,
right?
Because it's an unsolvable issue.
Right. That's right.
It's not perfect. It's not. It's just never. They pick abortion because it's an unsolved. There's so many other issues that we deal with daily. Right. There are people right now that I know from Syria, from Palestine, from African countries, and they're getting calls because they don't know their family just lost their homes. These are crises that we have every day. They never get talked about. Medicine. Why is the only time we talk about pharmaceuticals is when it's time to talk about weed, which finally is a nice topic to talk about because that was one of those unsolvable issues also. Yeah. But those are the issues they talk about. The issues that they know they don't have to worry about them in 8 years or 2 years.
And there's industries, right? So I'm not trying to say that the left and right thing is invalid. It's valid in the same way that gender and race.
It's a spectrum, though. Yeah. And literally a spectrum, even with race.
No, that's exactly right. So now picture another line cutting this way. So now you got left and right, but now here you've got anti-establishment, which I would call populism, and pro-establishment. Now with that spectrum, with that sort of cross there, I can take candidates and I can go, Hillary Clinton is a left pro-establishment person. Bernie Sanders is a left anti-establishment person. Donald Trump is a right, especially when he was running, a right anti-establishment person. Jeb Bush is a right establishment person. And there's a zillion permutations you can go. And the people I agree with are at the top of the anti-establishment spectrum.
Above most, yeah.
Right.
That's pretty much, yeah.
And
it's become clear nowadays, but back in the day, it was harder to tell who was who. But it got real clear this last 2 years.
And then the left-right spectrum I care less about, because I have more in common with an anti-establishment leftist than I do with a pro-establishment conservative. I have a lot more in common.
We were just talking about like the people who have been using I wouldn't even say the left versus the right, even though Ben Shapiro is one of the ones who likes to use the right? But there are people who have been using the Bernie Sanders progressive movement for their own personal gain. By all I am is Bernie, right? Right. And then you have those who are Trump, who they don't care what the policy is. They don't care about his flaws or the things that he's promised that he hasn't done, like delivered on. Like he said he was going to get rid of DACA, and that didn't happen. You know, there's things like that. And you've even seen huge switches, right? So because Trump won and he is ridiculously popular, and because it's the general, I guess, the demographic that he attracts, which is a lucrative one, like this middle class white American. There's enough of them that they will donate to anybody who says what they want to hear. Jumped over ship. How do you feel about these people who are using the same talking points of the establishment, or just have this blind loyalty to one person and they're never questioning them? How do you feel about that going on? Because I've seen it on the left, so I know you see it on the right.
It bothers me. The cult of personality thing bothers me, but the problem is, in my opinion, more systemic than it is individual. What I mean by that is, if you're brought up if you're brought up not having to think critically because of government propaganda or rampant consumerism, right? Or in our case, both. Right? So if you're brought up not having to think critically, I don't blame you if, as you're seeing the world change, you're like not able to think it through, because no one's ever said to you, hey, that left-right. See, here's the other thing about that left-right spectrum. It's all bullshit now, because is China a communist country?
No,
kind
of, maybe a little bit
more government, but it's got market elements. Is the United States a pure capitalist country?
No. People think it is for some reason, but hell, it's like it's not even. I mean, there are socialist elements to it that we barely benefit from, but I would say that it's more of an oligarchical nation above anything else, which means there's a lot of money, and there are some capitalist elements, but only when it's time to crush the smaller competition, and it's socialist elements only when it's time to elevate those who should have been eliminated by the market a long time ago, but were able to bail themselves out by paying off politicians.
But this is the and you're seeing it with Ocasio-Cortez right now. You're seeing it. This attack. Notice what's happened around the world as populist movements have sprung up. In Italy, they criticize it. Oh, it's a right-wing fascist movement. Then it happens in Mexico. AMLO. Oh,
it's a communist movement.
Communist movement.
Wow.
See, the people who understand what's going on are the billionaires, because then the billionaires aren't against government. They'll cash those checks, but they'll also cash the check on regulation. So a guy like Soros, does he fund leftist causes? 100%, absolutely. But does he fund the Atlantic Council and pro-war stuff? Absolutely. How did he? Is he pro-left? Yes. Is he a hedge manager? Yes. So what is he? He's rich. He's all of that. Yeah. And all of the rich people understand this. And so what they do is, if they can get everybody else fighting about, oh, Ocasio-Cortez, she's a socialist, you may not notice that she's anti-war, which is what they're really scared of.
Oh, yeah. Fox News actually put, trying to accuse her of being a communist or socialist or whatever.
Yes.
They put her entire platform in great detail on the screen.
Right.
That's what the only thing they did not put up there was.
And if you can scare people against Rand Paul, who, and let's call Rand Paul a racist, by the way. Exactly right. And Rand Paul's the guy who was going to, I know some people in the Rand Paul campaign, who was going to historically black colleges, but he wasn't doing a drive-by. Because go back and look this up. He'd go to historically black colleges. He would not get, everyone's not like, oh, Rand Paul, awesome. And he kept going back. That's respect.
Yeah.
Respect.
Well, because he actually, it seems to me that Rand Paul genuinely cares. I have problems with some of his approaches, but I do feel like he's genuine. He just kind of gets stuck in his ways sometimes.
Yeah.
Because it's like an ego thing. But he cares. He does care.
He's got the same problem that Ocasio-Cortez has, in fact, in the sense that they both are kind of stuck on these labels. I'm a libertarian. I'm a democratic socialist, which might make them go, well, I can't. I'm a democratic socialist, so I can't be in favor of that, or I'm a libertarian. So, and you see it in some areas. But that being said, if they could just there's chaos going on behind me. But if they could just see beyond that a little bit, on more issues, but we're not quite there yet. We're almost there. We're almost there. And that's why, like Ocasio-Cortez, I love how she's interacting with people on Twitter right now. People who are friends of mine, conservatives. John Cardillo said some stuff to her that was just like, they were giving her crap that she grew up in Westchester, even though she
it was a weird, man, they didn't even do any iota of research, by the way, because if you would have seen how cheap those houses were then compared to now, it was on the tip of the recession. So,
but also, it's a bogus attack. But, and again, John's a guy I know, John's a friend of mine. But what she did was she engaged him in a friendly way and said, actually, you said I went to an Ivy League school, Brown. I went to Boston University.
Mm-hmm.
Who does that? Which politician engages civilly and just said, let me just correct
Nina does. Actually, Nina does. I will say that Nina Turner, same results though. Same results. It comes off as her being more authentic. It means when you have your Twitter monitored for you, it's usually because we don't want you to mess up your image. You're worried that you're going to make a misstep because you're not saying what you genuinely feel, and they're worried that if you do say what you genuinely feel, it may come off wrong. But for me, for a real politician, it's okay to be wrong to some people. It's okay. The establishment's been getting away with it forever.
Right.
Literally. Like Debbie Wasserman Schultz voted for the same immigration detention center that she is in front of protesting. She voted for it. Right. So clearly people have a little bit more gray area. Even Bernie Sanders for his, he's dialed back a lot on the Russia propaganda, but Bernie Sanders is a very old style candidate, as in he sees the intel, he believes the intel. It sucks. But am I going to say he's an evil person because of it? No, I'm just like, that's kind of stupid, but I still love you guys. Cool, whatever. It's called being human. I know some people want to believe that it's nefarious sometimes. It's not. It's just being human.
Well, and that I've said this for a while, too. We haven't hit yet. And Trump, I will be honest with you, Trump is the closest we've come to it. I've been talking for a while about what I call the Howard Stern moment in politics. Here's what I mean by that. Before Howard Stern, one second. Thank you. Before, my dog needs to go for a walk. But before Howard Stern, everybody on the radio in the morning was like, hey there, how you doing, Niko? Nice to see you. Right?
Yeah.
That's the way they would talk. And Howard would just talk. And it was startling because when you heard him, you were aware of how fake you've been used to. So everybody else, Niko, I'd like to answer that question right now. Our country needs to, right? Boom, I've become a robot, right? And that's the way politicians sound. Obama was very good at it, but he sounded that way true. Trump and Sanders, both of them actually, sound like your grandfather
Trump, your drunk grandfather at the party, Bernie, the brother of the grandfather, like, chill.
If you're in New York, you hear Trump and Bernie arguing at delis across New York every morning.
Yep,
right?
Yep. They're arguing over the chessboard.
That's right, exactly. And so that had tremendous appeal for people. And that's what I like about what Ocasio-Cortez is doing. What she's doing is she's acting like a fucking human being.
Yeah, she's acting like a millennial.
And it's so startling. But see, a lot of millennials, but
I know what you mean. But
a lot of millennials have trouble doing that too. And
because they get so worried about how people perceive them. There's definitely there's a scope of millennials, like a spectrum on that too. It's like, so there's like the me who I just don't give a fuck.
Right.
So like the moment that someone tried to question my character, maybe not everybody, but there are people who have like said just outlandish stuff about my integrity, and I will engage them immediately. I'm like, okay, well, prove it. I mean, or I can show you proof otherwise, because at a certain point, I want people to know that there's nothing in it for me by engaging you. That's not the place, because it's the truth of the truth. I'm authentic and I have nothing to hide. And this is genuinely how I feel about these issues.
But my friend Andrew Breitbart had that thing, which is he would walk around at CPAC and he's the only guy who I've known who had, number one, access to the media, but he also was completely open. So he would walk around CPAC. I would walk around with him. No security guard. And people would come up to him and they'd say, "Hey, Andrew, I got a story for you." And he's like, "Here's my cell phone number." And it wasn't his like hidden cell phone that he never picked up. It was his cell phone number. Mm-hmm. Now, who does that? And he's the only guy I knew who did it in journalism, who was at that level, right? And so if I ever get to that level of fame, I am committed to being that guy.
Yeah.
And I worked in Hollywood for a long time. And in Hollywood, they say, when in your career, how you treat people when you're on your way up is how they'll treat you when you're on your way down.
Absolutely.
If you're a dick to people, when you're whoever, Bruce Willis at the top of your game, once your career starts to fade, those people will be like, "Hey, I was a PA and you were a dick to me. So guess what? Now I'm a director.
Yep.
Not hiring you." And it's the same, I think, in politics, but people are so used to this bullshit system, no one holds anybody accountable. And that's why the cult of personality is so bad. Just hold people accountable.
Yes, that's it. That's all I asked. That's it. But so we got about 10, 15 minutes left.
Yeah.
This OIG report.
Yes.
Now, clearly, you and Garland have been doing a fantastic job covering it. I've covered it, but it seems to me that it is only the right and maybe three people that I've seen on the left actually discussing just the realities that this IG report has revealed. I think there's so many revelations, bigger ones, small ones, but overall, I personally believe that it's a systematic revelation. It's a systemic revelation it's what I've said this entire time. I feel like the FBI director should be an elected position. I feel like the Supreme Court justice should be an elected position. I feel like if people are like, well, why do we want to make sure they have the experience? Like, this dude hired Andrew McCabe with almost no experience to be in the position that he was in. So like FBI, you can have a lawyer do it. You can have a former Intel analyst do it. Judges, it doesn't matter which type of law you've practiced, in my opinion, when you talk about the Supreme Court, because you're going to see all of them eventually. So for me, the biggest thing that it revealed is we have to stop allowing and being as naive to believe that like Hillary Clinton would have ever gotten prosecuted for Benghazi when Loretta Lynch was in office. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
the email scandal, how was it going to be prosecuted? How was she going to get in trouble for anything when her friend is James Comey, not some casual observer from this man was working with her in New York like over a decade ago. So like, what do you feel were the biggest revelations to with the OIG report?
Well, there's a lot of individual things in the report. To me, the big headline really is that I wasn't. So you talk about the systemic problem. Part of the systemic problem is that congressional reports are a joke, which I mean they are political. And this is not new. This goes back to the JFK assassination, and I'm sure it goes back beyond that. These are political documents, and let me explain part of the reason why. Often the IG's been there for a while, since the Obama administration, but a lot of times the staff and the budget have to be approved by Congress. Now, if there's a murder investigation and you're a cop, you don't have to go every year and go, hey, we're still investigating this murder. And they go, we're not going to fund that this year. You just keep investigating till you solve it, right? With these congressional investigations, often they have to keep getting funding every year. And that means if there's a political decision not to do it, they got to kiss ass to get the money. And then they have to kiss ass to keep the money. And it creates a mess. So the biggest takeaway was, to me, that I didn't expect much, but the stuff that came out about the politicalization inside the FBI, the stuff about Comey being insubordinate, all of that stuff, the individual stuff there was shocking but not surprising, if that makes sense.
We all were like, this is clearly happening, and everybody, but we like there's only so much you can speculate before you have to just wait until things come out. But when they came out, I couldn't say I was that surprised. I'm not gonna lie.
No, it's you can't be surprised, but on the other hand, you're going, well, that's gross. But but the question is, then do about it. And there's no organized movement right now, but I think that will change, of people who are just willing to say, you know what, we need to change. There's something about this process that's wrong. And we need to have a citizens commission. You see what I'm saying? Like,
seriously. It needs to rotate regularly.
So if you had a citizens commission where you said specifically, we're going to get some people on the left, we'll get some people on the right, we'll get some people who don't identify either way, and we'll have this all. Here's the thing. Because of YouTube and Google Hangouts and all this stuff, we actually have a way to do that now. You and I could form a citizens commission and start doing stuff. And my feeling is, if people did that and they took it seriously, they would develop an audience.
Yeah.
And but right now, that left-right thing is paradigm, so ingrained, and the populist line has no ideology for it. So I could tell you, and I both know what a Democrat looks like in terms of policy. We know what a Republican looks like. But what does a populist look like? And
I know, and it's crazy because I can name them. I can name people for you, but I couldn't tell you what. But I think that's the beauty of it, right?
Yeah.
Is that, like, they look different. They speak different. They all have different backgrounds. Some used to be Democrat, went Republicans, and vice versa. Some have never been anything. Some are Green Party. So, and I guess, and that's the problem, really, right? Because there's nothing consistent, really, for us to rely upon. It's almost like it goes without being said. You know when you know.
Well, so I've been trying to codify it. I've been thinking a lot about it for a year and a half now. And so, for instance, I'll give you 2 points. A populist, the way I'm defining it, is anti-oligarchy. In other words, you're worried about the where business and government come together. You're concerned about that, and you're anti-war. You can't be a pro-war populist. You can, in other words, you can be pro-specific war. You can say, you know what, if Canada attacks us, we'll fight back.
Yeah, clearly, yeah.
But you can't be an interventionist. And everybody I know, if I think about people on the spectrum who I consider populist, from Sanders to Trump, the way he ran, to Assange, to just name anybody, from Gabbard to Ocasio-Cortez to Rand Paul, all people, insofar as they're populists, which they are, they're anti-war. And the other reason for that is,
and more access. I know Rand, that's a big thing for him, and more access.
That's what everybody is too, right? But the war thing is real specific, which is the most elitist thing I can do is go, hey, we really need to fight that other country. Hey, who can we? Oh, Niko, you do it.
Yeah.
right? In other words, the people who declare war, they don't fight the war. They tell other people.
Damn sure gonna profit off of it, you know.
That's inherently elitist. That's inherently like, it's one thing to hire people to build your widgets in your factory. I get that. But like the war thing, it's inherently elitist. And so there's no populist movement yet, but I'm working on it. We have a thing called Solutions and Truth that we're working on. That's going to be a nonprofit that's pushing a populist solution. And what's our position on abortion? Don't have one. What's our position on whatever? I can name other issues. Don't have one. Our issues are going to be like 5 issues.
It's corruption, anti-war,
right?
Money out of politics,
oligarchy. Yeah, or at least the money out of politics is tricky, but that's a long story. I can tell you. A lot of people on the left misunderstand Citizens United. And yeah, I'll tell it to you briefly because a lot of people don't get this. Citizens United would have banned books. And don't take my word for it. Go to Slate, Dahlia Lithwick, not a right-wing source, and look up Citizens United ban books. And you'll find an article by Dahlia Lithwick. In the Supreme Court, one of the justices asked the Obama DOJ, well, could this law be used to ban books? And they said, well, yes, it could. And everybody in the courtroom, Dahlia Lithwick, I believe, says you could hear a pin drop because that's why they lost that. They lost it. It has nothing to do with corporate personhood.
Oh, it's almost probably like you lost it on purpose. I mean, that's what I.
Well, no, it would have. You got to remember, I know Citizens United. Like I know David Bossie, and he brought that lawsuit on purpose because here's what it is. Are corporations people? No, that's not the point. But if you and I make a film, let's say, right, likely we're going to form a corporation, an Lee Niko LLC, and that's what it's going to go out. So the point is, we don't lose our First Amendment rights just because you and I form an LLC to put out our film or our song or our book or whatever, because almost every book, song, and film is put out by a corporation because that's the way it is. That doesn't mean Disney. That means everybody. And so I'm very careful about money in politics, but I worry about that when people on the left talk about Citizens United.
Because I don't ever say Citizens United because I am aware that it was muddier than what people understand. That's why I specifically say getting big money out of politics, because there is a line from, do my employees donate, or are you just taking lump sums of money behind the name of X, Trump, for example?
Yes.
The same thing that he's using that he will use to bankrupt, but not lose any of his liquid. Things like that. Like if you're hiding behind that, especially if you're somebody like Trump, I get a little irritated, especially when I heard people who support Trump critique Ocasio. They're like, can you believe she wasn't really poor? Mind you, when we were like, Trump got his money from his dad, he openly admits it. Like that's where his first fortune came from. And they're like, that's okay. It's just a smart investor. He's a smart investor. You can't take it okay, so it was a problem when she was kind of, I guess, better off than what they thought, and it wasn't for Trump. It's okay, perfectly fine with that. It was really weird. It was really weird. She
committed not being poor while black or whatever, right?
And that's pretty much what it was. No, that's. I'm glad you said that. Man. See, this is what I'm talking about. That's why I had you on, because I think people need to really understand that they're more populist than anything else out there.
Yeah, but
that see it daily.
It was bogus. And furthermore, where I would have had a problem with the case of doing that, it was just she lied about it, but it was on her website. And every politician says, if you were born in Oklahoma and you left there when you were 1 day old, and then you came back 37 years later and you ran for Senate. Let's talk about Hillary Clinton, right?
Oh my God, 15 home states, man. But how many times do we hear she's back in her home state during the election?
And by the way, have you ever heard her Southern accent?
Oh, it's the worst. Oh, Jesus, it's the worst.
It's hilarious.
It's god awful.
When she was in Arkansas, she had suddenly the worst Southern accent in the world, and so people are used to that. But it was an unfair attack on her case. I don't care whether she was born in. If she'd lied about it, I wouldn't like that.
Yeah, and that would be the point. And that's how they were trying to portray it, which was really weird. They were like, the girl she's not really from the Bronx. It's like, hold on. She didn't even say she was from the Bronx. She said she currently lives there and that her dad was from there.
And she was born.
And she was technically born there.
Right.
And for those who don't know, Westchester County is where people who finally get enough money to leave the Bronx, like the Bronx County schools, like that's where they go. Like that's a normal thing.
I lived in Chappaqua.
Oh, so you know. So yeah.
It was cool. But I was a teaching assistant in Yonkers, and Yonkers ain't Chappaqua. Let me put it that way. But they're both Westchester. So no, it was a bullshit attack, and it was a bullshit attack that bothered me because I accept a certain amount of what they call in advertising puffery from politicians. I'm from the Bronx. Okay, you were born there, and then okay, I get it. That's what you do. In the same way, when you go to a concert and they say, Cleveland, you're the best audience.
Cleveland, you're the best audience until I go to Cincinnati.
Right. Exactly right. But no one goes, hey, fuck you. What do you mean? You just kind of go, yay, Cleveland rocks or whatever. And that to me is like, it's great to, every time Ted Cruz goes, it's great to be back in Texas or whatever. Does he mean that? I don't know. Is the parts he's in so great? I don't care. That to me is the kind of thing where it's just such a low bar.
It's the showmanship.
Right.
Like, which if there's some stuff that you can milk,
right.
Because there's always gray, right? She is technically from the Bronx. If you want to go into the nuance, maybe you feel like she isn't from the Bronx, but then we could talk about the fact that her family was still living in the Bronx, so she was always there. Like,
it's just
like, what does that even mean? She lived there now. She's running for office. And when she said that, her point was, how can someone who doesn't even live here represent us? Yeah. She literally has lived there for like the last 8 years.
Yeah. What would be
that was the point.
There's things you could do as a socialist that, in my opinion, would be hypocritical. That ain't one of them.
Yeah.
That's just
it's the same thing. Yeah, it's the same thing. There's things that, like, you hear people like Ted Cruz, like Lombas immigrants, when he knows for a fact his dad is one.
Right.
Like, he's ignoring this naturalization process. This really controversial naturalization issue. They're going after anybody over mistakes, whatever. But like, you were indeed a naturalized citizen, and you never know what could have happened. There could have been a typo under your paperwork. These type of things, both the right and the left, they're very selective.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I also don't have a problem with someone, and people don't do this. Who was going to win between Ocasio and Crowley? Well, the answer is not a Tea Partier.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
So if I had to look at that election and it was Ocasio versus a Tea Partier who I thought could reasonably win, even if I didn't think they would, I'd go, well, I'm in favor of the Republican. But her beating Crowley is nothing but awesome.
Yeah,
Crowley is everything that I don't like, not because he's a Democrat, but because he's an establishment guy. And everybody who loves Trump should have gone, you know what? I don't agree with Ocasio, but
even Trump celebrated her. He was like, she beat Crowley, and she beat him with a lot of energy. She worked really hard on her campaign. I was like, wow, what a glowing review. Like, she did.
Right.
It was kind of interesting. I covered the next morning because I was waiting for the establishment to spin it like into an anti-Trump win somehow, some way, and it happened.
Yes.
And they just made it seem like all Trump had did was insult Crowley, because that's the first thing that he said on Twitter, which we knew was coming. But like, in his actual speech, he was very celebratory of Ocasio, talking about her energy, talking about the populist aspects of her campaign, and people were cheering.
That's right. But see, this is why Ben Shapiro, for instance, is just a shill, because he knows that he can stir people up on the right. But, I hate socialism. It's like, I don't like socialism. I can make a very coherent argument against it, but I'm not worried about Ocasio getting elected and suddenly
we turn to communist Russia.
McDonald's is nationalized or something. Like, that's not going to happen. And even on the healthcare debate, healthcare is one of those issues where nobody gets it right, in my opinion. You're not going to have a healthcare system without a market aspect in the United States.
Yeah, it'd be single payer public option would be the or private option, I should say, would probably be the best that we'll get.
The absolute best, because here's the thing: if someone wants to get a boob job, should that be covered by
exactly?
Probably not, right? If I want to get a nose job,
would be a new market, right? If you could actually get like legitimate health insurance for those private choices. Right. Then you would have another market to maintain that, like to maintain health insurance.
What I've said is the rich and the poor in America are actually both covered by healthcare, because if you make low enough money, there's all sorts of programs that kicked in, and if you make a lot of money, the people who get fucked every time are the people in the middle.
And more than anybody.
Every time.
There are people that I know. When I was doing health insurance consulting. They made $100,000 a year out in Arizona. Right. Their premium was $2,500 a month. Right. So by the time they paid for their taxes, paid for their bills, paid for their health care, paid for their deductibles, right, they were making like $3,000 a month.
I was making enough where when Obamacare kicked in, I made the choice, because I did the math, that it's easier for me to pay the fine to the IRS than it was to pay for the insurance. And I got diabetes. And
that's crazy. Oh my God.
Oh, I know. And I was just like, but you know what? I can do math, and a lot of people can do math.
And a lot of people made that choice, by the way.
And that's right. And so I stopped feeling badly about it and like blaming myself and going, no, wait, this system's fucked right now. But there's no original. I will say this. There's no, because again, it's that fight between left and right. And if you can keep it here, we get a system that's kind of corporate care, that's in favor of, who's in favor of it? Obama and Romney. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's what bothered me as a Democrat with Obamacare. And so we can't have a discussion where we go, look, hey, people on the right, face facts. There's going to be some public funding of healthcare,
which a lot of them are okay with when they actually get when they're benefiting from them. I know a lot of them are, because they were mad. They were like, I used to get free, and then this Obamacare kicked in, and I lost everything. I was like, hold on. Obamacare's been around for a while now. When did you? I was like, it sounds like, because they made a lot of changes every single year. And so they were mad about that. But because of the election coming up, they equated everything to Obamacare's fault.
Well, they see, here's the thing. I'm convinced the healthcare industry saw Tower Records go out of business. What I mean by that is they saw an entire industry, record stores. When I was growing up, record stores are everywhere. They saw digital technology wipe out that industry in like a year and a half. Boom, gone. And healthcare realized that because I can now, if I got something wrong with me, potentially I could have my doctor and go, okay, here's what's going on. She could say, or she could diagnose me. Or in the case of diabetes, the whole thing's a racket, because if you have a ketogenic diet.
Oh my goodness, that's the biggest one. The biggest racket. I would say diabetes probably makes more money than cancer.
It does, and it's completely treatable without drugs. If you set your diet right, you can treat it. Ketogenic diet, look up keto, K-E-T-O diet. You can bring your blood sugar down, because I did it without drugs. That scared the shit out of them. And the reason it scared the health insurance industry is they realized digital technology meant, oh my God, we're in trouble. And so they put a system in. They got the left and right fighting about it, and where they're making huge profits now. And
I would say more than they were before, and the government's also paying out more than it was before. It literally helped nobody but the people who passed the laws. Like
that's right. That's one of those issues where I'm like, everyone's like, well, we need single payer, or like we need to get the government out of healthcare. I'm like, you're both nuts. And what we need to do is actually reduce the cost of healthcare by the fact that I can now take my blood pressure with an app.
We need to get the FDA out of the picture. That's what we need to do. That's a different discussion. And before we go, because we do got to start finishing up, but I'm one of those people who, I will get criticized because somebody's like, well, taxation and stuff. I say that's not always the case, right? Because we have to understand where taxing came from. It was state by state basis, right? And it was controlled in that state. Right. The federal government, I don't think they deserve my money. They don't know how to spend my damn money. And that's just a fact. It would be different if, like, people say, I paid my honest share and we could tax the rich and we could. I'm like, until we can prove that, there's some people who are against any increase in minimum wage. Okay,
Right.
cool. So my thing is, if you're on the right and you're fighting against a minimum wage increase, talking about we need to let the market determine it. Well, fuck you. Then stop giving yourself raises every damn year. Talking about, well, we have to keep up with inflation.
Right. Yeah.
So same thing. Like I said, I am pro-choice, but I would rather, if I was involved in one, I would rather keep it.
Right.
I am, and you are clearly in Garland and Tim Black and a lot of people that I know.
Yeah.
My point, we're all on spectrums.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
All of us.
Yeah.
There's never, when people say socialism is not the answer, absolutely not, or capitalism is always the answer. And I'm like, nah, y'all, it's kind of somewhere in between. Literally every single time. Every single time, the answer is somewhere. Guns, totally 100% legal, not the answer. Making them 100% illegal with this government? Hell no.
Right.
Not even.
That's right. Yeah.
It's somewhere in the middle, and that doesn't only apply to us, that applies to our federal government. So what my point is, that damn that small government, big government shit, because that's, and in my opinion, another one of those right left. We need to break up and disperse power, which means creating more access. That's what we need. We need to have the proper amount of representatives, right? In the House of Representatives right now, it should be around 6,000, something close to it.
Yeah.
We need to have our delegates back in our states, making sure that they're holding the representatives.
Right.
Representatives need to be holding the governorship accountable, because they're going to be, not only, they got to get voted on, but the delegates are also keeping up with you because they're listening to the people.
Yeah.
We need more representation, because right now I feel like we are living in what made them throw the goddamn T off the fucking boat to begin with. We don't have any.
Right. Well, what I always say is we're at a point right now where people can't picture it because it doesn't exist. But what I say, I'm old enough to remember when there was no Starbucks. Okay. And if I'd come to you when there was no Starbucks and said, hey, I got an idea, we're going to have a coffee place. And you're like, okay, we already got Dunkin' Donuts. And you're like, no, hear me out. It's going to be European style coffee that will sell for $5 a cup. You'd go, this is the stupidest idea I'd ever heard. And the fact is, you need somebody with the vision to go, no, because we're also going to have internet. It'll be a place to work. It'll be kind of cool. Then soon they'll be on
You make it trendy. You don't make it about the coffee, you make it about the environment.
So the problem with populism right now is it's Starbucks before there was Starbucks. I can explain it and it sounds crazy, but then when you look at how popular the political parties are, their approval ratings are like at 6%.
Yeah.
And when you look at how popular media is, it's like 8%. And so if people come forward and start going, you know what, we're going to blow off that stuff, we're new, people will grasp it. That's why I've been working on trying to conceptualize what populism looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't make people, it doesn't mean you have to stop being a Democrat or stop being a Green, because we're going to avoid the issues that we're not going to agree on today and just go, you be you when it comes to that issue. But let's
know what you do when you're a leader too, because I'll say that when you're a populist, even when you're a president, you don't get to tell people what it's like. Why are we even talking about abortion? Right. I don't know what the best thing for the country is until you all tell me. I need to get a pulse on how people feel about it. And I should only be getting that. I can hear from the people if I'm talking to them directly, or the representatives, or like I said, the delegates that are supposed to be attached to representatives. And it's supposed to be, this system is not our representative democracy created, in case you didn't know.
On purpose.
On purpose, exactly. Right. They consolidated power. I know it started, at least began from my knowledge, with Teddy Roosevelt, and it just got worse and worse from there. So, but with that being said, Lee, where can people find you at?
So the best place to find everything is Stranahan, which is STRANAHAN, at Twitter. That we link to the radio show and everything. The other thing I'll mention to people is I have something called Citizen Journalism School, citizenjournalismschool.com, and it's trying to teach people what I've learned as a journalist working on big stories that I'm always right on for 10 years now. And it tells people how to organize material. It's no ideological component where you don't have to. I'm not trying to tell people what to believe. I'm trying to show them how to research in the 90s, how to use Evernote, how to use Aeon Timeline, how to film a protest, how to whatever, all the stuff that I've done. I've covered White House press briefing, stuff like that. And I think I'm really very proud of Citizen Journalism School in the sense I think it's a very good education. It's completely affordable compared to real journalism schools
like J School, which is going to be full of shit. They teach you some like they don't teach you anything at J School, by the way. Just how to write an article and be fake on TV.
See, I'm old enough. I'll be 53 this year. I came up in the punk era where you just start your own band. Then in the 90s, I came up in the film era with Tarantino, Rodriguez. You just make your own film. Kevin Smith, Spike. You just make your own film. So now we're in a political era where people like you, I've never talked to you about this, but you do this. I'm going to make a prediction. You do this as a form of self-expression, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? A lot of people now are doing politics as a form of self-expression, whereas 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, they may have started a band. 30 years ago, they may have done a film. They still may do that now, but they do political blogging as a way of expressing who they are and trying to find meaning in the world, which is kind of an artistic function.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a super exciting time to be alive. And,
absolutely. And being so journalists also, and being on the right side of it too, because people are going to get exposed.
Yeah.
Joe Rogan is one of those. I feel like Joe Rogan is like one of the geniuses in this era of politics. And I know he does sports too, but really it seems mostly like he does politics now. And he's the definition of really what we want. As far as we want open dialogue with everybody. Right.
Yeah.
But also, I'm going to call your ass out if you're saying some dumb shit. Because he's very good at staying on people because he has both the left and the right on. And when he felt like he was having one too many people from the right on, he sent out an open invite to the left and allowed people to come on. So
that's right.
That's really what we want to be at overall. I
hope he moves back to the right soon because I'd like to be on Rogan's show.
Well, hey, man, you should reach out to him. He's pretty good at responding back to people.
Well, the other thing I'll mention is fault lines, but I'm about to go to Helsinki in a week. I go to cover the Trump-Putin thing. Then I'm going to England for a few days to do some I haven't done journalism where I go out in the field and do reporting because I do the radio show. So I got reporting coming up from England, and that's a news hook. I may reach out to his bookers and go, hey, we're doing some interesting stuff. But I'd love to be on the show. I think Garland should be on the show too.
Yeah, I mean, he had Kyle Kalinske from Secular Talk on there.
Yeah.
He had Jimmy Dore on there, who's about as popular as it can get. He and Tim Blacker, and this, like I said, it's worth reaching out to him. It's definitely
Rogan's one of those people. He's doing very, very interesting stuff. I like his podcast quite a bit, and I've been watching him for a while. I know,
remember the Fear Factor Rogan? I totally forgot I was the same guy. I totally didn't even realize.
Well,
I used to watch Fear Factor every Friday or something like that with my mom, or Tuesday.
And then the big thing was News Radio before that, which is a show he did before that with Andy Dick and Phil Hartman. But I've seen him do stand up and stuff 10 years ago or whatever at the Comedy Store and stuff. So Rogan, and he worked with Doug Stanhope, who's a stand up comedian I really like a lot, a libertarian, funny as shit comedian who I like quite a bit. And I know Doug a little tiny bit. And I love what Rogan's doing, but I love what you're doing too, Niko. And thanks so much for having me on.
Well, hey, man, I appreciate you coming on. So go follow Lee on Twitter at Stranahan. Literally, that's it. And go make sure you follow the Fault Lines Twitter and catch their show every day from 7 a.m. Eastern to 10 a.m. Eastern. And other than that, that's going to be it for tonight, people. Appreciate you coming on, Lee. And for everybody else, always remember, more than anything else, find your balance. Peace.